Duran Duran has sold over 80 million records, had 18 American hit singles and 30 UK top 30 hits. Now the boys are back with their they're men. And men are back with their 13th album, All You Need Is Now. The new single is Leave a Light On, and John Taylor, Simon Le Bon and Nick Rhodes join me now. Men, you are, yes, not Piers. Boys anymore.
Exactly.
And you're alive. I'm alive. We're all alive.
Yes.
Who would have thought that from the 80s in Britain?
We survived the 80s.
Exactly.
And the 90s, yeah.
It's the third British invasion, Piers.
Exactly, exactly. When you, I mean, you've never really gone away, but when you come to America now, how has it changed in all senses from when you first came out here?
Wow, I mean, we came out, we really hit New York to begin with, and it was just an incredible time. The early 80s in New York was amazing. The clubs that were there, Peppermint Lounge and Danceteria and Area, it was incredible. There was a real scene there. Things have shifted a little bit now. How was LA when we came here first?
Boring.
Was it?
Yeah, I mean, we played the Roxy, we did 2 shows at the Roxy, and we stayed at we got kicked out of the Hyatt, Continental Hyatt.
Yeah. Kicked out of the Hyatt?
Well, yeah, well, that was a must-do.
It was a must-do.
Yeah. You must get kicked out of the Hyatt.
So how did you get kicked out?
Andy Taylor, who's guitarist of Duran Duran, was standing on top of the hotel where there's a pool, and he found a bucket, and he was filling it up with water from the pool and pouring it over the diners who were eating in the open dining area, 20 floors below. I got a phone call, and they said, you've got 15 minutes to get out of your room. I said, 15 minutes? Yes, 15 minutes. Pack your bags and get out of the room.
Sounds like the tour manager.
The tour manager was Trevor. Our Trevor from Wolverhampton was very concerned about it because he was in the lobby and he got arrested by 7 policemen.
Yeah.
And he just said, I surrender.
You see, modern bands just don't do this kind of thing, do they?
They haven't lived.
They're gutless.
Gutless.
Can you chuck things out of a 20-storey floor of a hotel? Really, you're not a proper rock star, right?
Bloody Geordies, you know, you can't trust them.
What about the music business itself? Because we were saying that there's this amazing record store around the corner. We've actually got vinyl sitting here in front of us here. And it's Amoeba's, the store. But, I mean, vinyl, for all intents and purposes, is just not there anymore. And how are you finding the changing style of music?
Vinyl is here, actually. It's almost like the slow food movement now. You know,
Is
people,
it?
well, in a way, in that, you know, MP3s have become like the fast food of music. And if you want to listen to, and you have a need, you can fix it with an MP3.
How do you guys listen to music yourselves?
Well, ideally, I listen to music like that.
Do you?
Yeah, yeah.
Do all of you do that?
Yeah.
Do you?
I don't have vinyl at home. I have to confess, at the studio we have vinyl.
And why do you
It's
prefer
better
it?
quality. It's much better quality.
Vinyl is better, is it?
It's a bigger sound.
Is it really?
Yeah, and it's fun as well. It's a ritual putting it on, you know, getting it out of the sleeve, making sure that there's no fluff on it, and putting it on and putting the needle on. My wife Yasmin has vinyl nights, and she invites the friends over, and they play 70s disco, 70s and 80s disco music. Just
See what they wear.
Are you guys on iTunes? You
We
have
are.
resisted like that?
Indeed.
1 or 2 people are still resisting.
iTunes is incredible, though. I mean, that is the world's record store now, no doubt. We actually released All You Need Is Now, the album, on that first, before we put it out.
And can you make any money from that kind of thing, real money? Or is all the money now just from, as I hear it, from touring and merchandise?
Well, obviously, there's been enormous problems with illegal downloads, which has affected the entire industry in a massive way. But I think that'll resolve itself over time.
How do you feel about it ideologically? Because you guys were the sort of trailblazers, but come on, we're all young, hip, crazy people. Part of you must think if you were a teenager, you wouldn't be paying for records, would you? I mean, you'd be trying to get them on the slide, wouldn't
Well,
you?
I think everybody likes to have things free. There's no question in that. I understand it entirely. But at the same time, if we all did that in every industry, then there wouldn't be any...
No, it's completely wrong. I'm just not sure how you tame the internet beast in that way.
Yeah, the culture is changing. You know, we're old guys, you know, and we're judging the business by our standards from when we were teenagers. But young people today have got an entirely different idea about how things are, you know. So I think kids that are growing up that are starting bands have different expectations about what they can earn and how they can earn it. They have different ideas.
By the way, you're not old guy, John. I mean, you're...
Did I say old?
I think, you know, vaguely maturing. I mean, like a fine Chateau Latour or something. I mean, this is not... Yeah. Now, Simon, last time I saw you was at the Chelsea Flower Show in London, one of our great social occasions, and you could barely speak. It was back in May, and you had this dreadful thing. Tell me what happened. You were on stage.
We were on stage in Cannes playing at a show that was very late at night. I must have gone in very hard at the beginning of the show, and I went for a note in the third song, All You Need Is Now, and I tried to hit it and it wasn't there, and I couldn't hit anything above that note, so I lost 7 notes of my range. And I've seen so many doctors. It's been
How did you,
a
when you
wonderful
came off stage,
ride.
how did you feel?
Terrible. I mean, I didn't feel ill, but psychologically I felt damaged.
I mean, you've been a singer 30
Yes,
years.
yeah.
That's all you've known, really.
Yeah, and you know, people were very nice to me, but I basically figured out that if I can't sing, what can I do? You know, I'm a good dad. You know, I'm good at looking after the dogs. I can ride bikes.
How long does that get boring?
So, but it was very challenging to me, and I was out of action for a long time. It was.
Well, your whole tour had to be cancelled, like European tour.
Yeah, but we're back on now. I've made a lot of improvements.
I mean, for the rest of you, I mean, a worrying moment, right?
Yes,
And,
it was, yeah.
You know, I mean, you guys, the story is great. You formed Duran Duran, and then either you found Simon, or as I believe he prefers to tell it, he found you, right? Which way around was it?
Well, actually, there was a middle person, Fiona, that Simon was living with, but she was working at the club that Nick and I and Roger were working in. We kind of got the band going, but we didn't have a frontman. So we had the name and we had a sound.
Actually, we'd split up, and she came to me and she said, "Simon, I think you should go and meet these guys." And I thought, okay, well, I will. and I turned up one day, and we hit it off immediately. We recognised the kindred spirits in the way we dressed, in what music we liked, in everything.
You were new romantics, weren't you?
We were
a label?
We were post-punks at that point.
Post-punk?
There wasn't such
Pre-new romantic?
There wasn't such a thing as new romantics.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you evolve into new romantics, or did you like to think you never really crossed that barrier?
There was something a little opportunistic about that, I think.
Yes.
But there was an article in Sounds about Spandau Ballet calling them the New Romantics. And we didn't know what they sounded like, but reading the article, it sounded like they were doing a similar thing to what we were doing. So we called up the journalist who'd written the piece and said, you know, we're doing something like that. You should come and check us out.
Well, a short break, Chess. When we come back, I want to take you back to the heady days of sex, drugs and rock and roll.
Brilliant.
Which I used to report on and feel envious from my horrible little tabloid desk. Single, Leave a Light On, from the Unstage series performed in LA and directed by David Lynch. Your new collaborations with Mark Ronson on the new album. Now, he's an exciting talent, isn't he? Tell me about that.
Mark has been a bit of a Duran fan for quite a few years. I remember meeting him in the street in New York. Excuse me. I remember meeting him in the street in New York. He was 10 years old and he asked my autograph then.
Did you really?
Yeah. And he's come to us with a vision of how he feels Duran Duran should sound from the point of view of a fan. And it was something which really helped us.
What did he tell you that you maybe had just, I don't know, either got a bit complacent about, or how did he revive the Duran magic, do you think?
Well, I think really what Mark did was focus our attention on what we're good at.
Yeah.
He said, look, what people like about Duran Duran is this about your sound, the way that, John, you play bass and you do this with Roger and you lock down to this funky groove, and then Simon sing beautiful melody on top of this.
Was it reminding you, I mean, as a fan, was it reminding you of what you were all really good at? Or was it making you more adaptable to the modern market?
He said you don't have to try, you just have to do what you do. And that's what people want from you.
If anything, it was reflecting for the first time on our earlier material, because we don't usually look back a lot. We try and just stay blinkered and move forward.
He had obviously a famous collaboration with Amy Winehouse,
right.
And obviously she tragically died recently. When you look at what happened to Amy Winehouse, you guys at the peak of your fame, I remember I was reporting on it for one of the British papers, you know, you lived the excess life with great gusto and indeed pride and enthusiasm. When you see what happened to Amy, what do you think of that?
Well, I think we were fortunate that we were a band, first of all, and that we always had each other. And I think that, you know, whenever one of us got too close to the abyss, there were 4 guys kind of, you know, you felt that. I mean, things got pretty hairy for all of us to different degrees. And we were quite, I'm quite grateful that we didn't lose anybody.
Did you all have moments when you could potentially have ended up like Amy. Yeah, I had her father in. It's very interesting. I mean, the first report said there were no drugs in her body.
Right.
He said she'd been clean of drugs for 3 years, but had a big problem with alcohol since then. But that actually her body, she was told to try and gradually come off alcohol, and she would do binge drinking and then do 2-3 weeks of no drinking at all. And she was tiny.
Exactly.
And he believes her body just in the end gave up. She'd have seizures
She got
and so on.
so thin, didn't she?
Yeah, and she'd have these seizures, and so it may be much more complicated than people think. But to me, there's no doubt that, you know, her spiralling descent into all that began when she got into the hard drugs. I mean, and the father accepts that. She got in with this guy, and suddenly it was all heroin and ecstasy and cocaine.
Which we never went. We never went down that road.
Did you not?
No. No.
I think it's interesting, this parental role, isn't it? I mean, do you enjoy it, or do you feel this part of you when you go on tour now think, I've got to roll back the years here? You know, I'm getting old here.
I think you've got to. I think, well, the way I deal with it is I just accept what I am and where I am in my life, and that I have kids, that I love them. I've got a good marriage. I'm not dangling myself out there as someone who's available. And
is that just as well, you think, Jess? Would there be a massive queue these days? I mean, oh yeah. Are these old fans of yours who've come with you, or do you have a new breed?
Mix. Some of them bring their kids. It really is from the internet as well. I think a lot of people consume music in a different way now, and it's not so much to do with, okay, this belongs in this time period.
I mean, when we were kids, right, when we were 17, 18, I mean, we only listened to music that had been made that year or the year before, maybe, right? You know, now kids listen to 60s music, 70s music, 80s music.
It's completely true. My three sons, they'll listen to Michael Jackson or whatever, or Duran Duran. I mean, it's very interesting that their musical tastes are much wider. Right. And they don't feel boxed into a trendy, groovy set of music. Let's have another break. When we come back, I want to talk to you about what's kept the band together. Most bands get sick and tired of each other. You are still talking. You appear to be reasonably friendly to each other. No one's hit anyone yet. I want to find out how and why. Of course, the immortal video from Duran Duran's Ordinary World. One thing your world hasn't been, chaps, is ordinary, has it?
How for that?
Yeah, exactly. How have you stayed good mates? Because I know you are good mates. How have you managed to avoid the rock and roll cliche of artistic differences when never speaking again?
I think being a band goes beyond friendship, actually. There are times when you're together because you're in a band, and there are times when you could fall out with each other. But I think underneath that there's an underlying affection that we've got. We care about each other, and whenever there's a difficult time, it kind of that fades away and that care comes through underneath. We all like the same things. We love music. I think our relationship's very much based on that as well. The fact that we love it.
Yeah, I mean, this summer actually going through this business with Simon's Voice has actually brought us closer together. It was one of those situations where we could have been like, you know, it could have been an opportunity to splinter, and it drew us together.
Well, what are the ambitions now? Do you have a genuine ambition, or is it just to keep going?
I think keeping going and to create a body of work is one of the big ambitions. It is for me.
We always like to challenge ourselves. I mean, doing this album with Mark Ronson, we didn't know what we were really going to get. But I think we could all look each other in the eye and say it's the best Duran Duran album we have made for more than a decade. And, you know, if you can do that when you're 3 decades in, that keeps it pretty exciting. We made a film with David Lynch. That was great. We'd all been fans since we were kids.
The odd thing to me about the three of you is that you two are on Twitter. I know this because I read your tweets, and we're all fairly avid. You're not. You're Mr.
Because I don't want you reading my tweets.
Wait, but is that what it is? Is it more of a privacy thing? Because I would imagine you'd be the first into that kind of stuff.
I like the idea of it, but I think, one, it's very time-consuming. These two are at it all the time. But I also, I'm sure I'll get sucked in eventually. Just haven't gone there yet.
So here's a question for all of you. What was the single greatest gig you've ever played? Would you be in agreement, do you think?
Well, you know, Coachella was great this
Yeah.
year. I mean, that was really up
You were
there.
third on,
Yeah.
the sun was just
Yes,
beginning to
yeah,
set,
yes.
right? I mean, that's a moment to play Coachella,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Well, was that the best ever?
I think up to that point,
Even
it
at the
was.
height of the mania?
Yeah.
You can't just
some
pick
amazing
one.
gigs.
Madison Square Gardens is always great.
Yeah.
When we play in London, it's always great. But then sometimes you'll play in a city, I don't know, Kansas City or something, and maybe your expectations aren't the same as New York or LA, and it'll be the best show of
Yeah.
the tour.
That's something you learn. You learn you can have an amazing show in front of a couple of hundred people, and you can have a really crap show in front of 20,000.
And the most
It doesn't
outrageous-
necessarily mean...
Most outrageous party in Duran Duran
Well,
history.
we're
It's-
going into
it's-
Warren
it's-
Cucurullo, the Warren Cucurullo years.
I was going to say, Nick's wedding wasn't bad.
Oh, my God,
I mean,
yes.
it was
80s
quite...
Where was that?
At the Savoy. Pink Flamingos at Al.
Pink
The
flamingos in the
groom wore more
Savoy.
makeup than the bride.
A lot of pink. There was a lot of pink. It's hard for us to get away from pink, though. You look at our album cover, it's still half pink.
How many of you still wear makeup? You clearly have a little
Really?
bit on, don't you? I mean, you do
I
for this
didn't
show,
notice it this
but do you
morning.
normally?
It's a tattoo.
Yeah. When you're going out, do you still get the old gear on?
If I feel like it, you never know. Rubber suit, bit of makeup.
Simon, do you?
Yeah, if I feel I need it, yes.
Let's form a very quick dream group to round off this interview.
Okay.
All-time dream group. Assume you're in it. So it's just, who would you bring in as additional singers or
Motown rhythm
guitarists?
section. James Jamerson and Benny Benjamin.
Yeah.
Bass and drums.
Yeah. So other
Brian
singers.
Eno on
Who's the
keyboards.
best other singer you've ever seen live?
Wow, I'd love to
Prince.
Prince is pretty amazing, isn't it?
yeah. I'd have Patti Smith on backing vocals, but she'd upstage me.
We're a pretty good group. Gentlemen, it's been brilliant rolling back the years with you. Good luck with the album. All you need is now.